what are some of the coping mechanisms that families can bring in?
What gives me the most confidence is that there are some really exciting studies that are going on. That gives me a lot of hope.
Welcome to the Empowered Elder Podcast.
Parkinson's affects nearly 1 million people in the United States, and that number is expected to grow in the coming years. But what's equally important is this. People are living longer, fuller lives with Parkinson's than ever before, and yet so much of the conversation still centers around decline instead of empowerment, around symptoms instead of strategy, around fear instead of forward movement. Today, we want to shift that narrative.
Because living well with Parkinson's isn't about pretending it's easy. It's about understanding what's within your control. It's about building strength, physically, emotionally, and socially. And it's about knowing you are not alone.
We're your hosts, Nicole Robilotto and Tasha Beckman, and this is the Empowered Elder Podcast, where we talk about home, heart, and the next chapter of life. So let's get started.
Are there telehealth resources available if someone does live in a ranch or farming community?
Yep, there are. And thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, that has become much more acceptable and accessible today than it was 6 years ago.
So that's a silver lining of COVID, one of them.
It is a silver lining. Yeah.
And definitely, I mean, from a family perspective, and we think about the caregivers, and it's not only the patient when they receive the news, but the family and how they approach and trying to find that team, not only from a physician standpoint, but what are the resources for the support for a family member to have, because it can be so overwhelming. Where do you start, or how do you, my loved one is having this symptom, or how do I handle or have a conversation with my family, my loved one who has, been diagnosed with Parkinson's? What are the right words to say? How do I get through the day?
Yeah. As a care partner or a family member of somebody with Parkinson's, oftentimes in the first handful of years of after diagnosis, your family isn't that involved. Parkinson's generally progresses very slowly, and care partner isn't usually all that involved. However, they've also received a life-altering diagnosis. And organizations like the Davis Phinney Foundation exist to provide those individuals as well with the information and the resources they need, because they've never done this before either, generally. Generally, they've never had a Parkinson's diagnosis in their family. We know that the health of our person with Parkinson's is much better off if the health of their family and their primary caregiver is better. So ensuring that primary caregiver or care partner is well informed, is well resourced, knows how to support, and then knows how to take care of him or herself, and put their health as a priority, is crucial to a person with Parkinson's better outcomes. We also know that a number of folks who are diagnosed with Parkinson's don't have family. And so then it's the challenge of how do we help, how do we as community members, and how do we as an organization help that individual and step up where that individual might need help? How do we train that individual with Parkinson's to ask for help, to know the kind of help they're going to need? But then how do we, as people who are living around neighbors and friends who have Parkinson's, how do we know how to support? What do we do to support the person with Parkinson's and really to support the care partner? But again, if you don't have a care partner, to support the person with Parkinson's.
And if there are friends and family around, what are the empowering conversations that the family should be having to strengthen the clarity, the trust, the confidence for the road that they're going to experience coming up?
I think it's exactly that, just being really open and honest with communication, honest about fears, honest about grief, and sort of loss. And that's loss of, as we talked about before, what you thought your future was going to be like, loss of a partner participating in the way they used to be able to participate, loss of sometimes friends. A lot of folks who get a diagnosis like this, friends don't know how to support and they step away as opposed to leaning in and helping because people don't know how to help. So yeah, having really open conversations if the family's adept at those conversations, and if not, maybe bringing in extra support to have those honest conversations. And honestly, having conversations about let's talk about estate planning. Let's talk about our healthcare directives. Let's talk about these things now when we don't really need to talk about them, but then that is already taken care of. And then that's one less thing you have to worry about in the future. And I'm sure you all do that in what your work is talk about when you're not under stress, when you don't have a crisis going on, talk about what you imagine and what you'd like and how you'd like the future to look. Those things can always be updated, but then you don't have this hanging over you like, oh, I've got to update my will. I've got to update all the documents. Just take care of it early and have those conversations with your family about meaning, like what's meaningful to you and how do you want things to look as you age, as you get older, and
so then you can focus on living well after you've done the planning. I mean, like you said, things can be adjusted later, but at least you've got the framework in place.
Well, what I was going to say is I think that families, as a general statement, struggle with showing vulnerabilities. And when they get a diagnosis of any kind, it kind of forces that level of communication and building the trust and open dialogue that maybe they didn't have in the past.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the coping mechanisms that families can bring in, either from a facilitation perspective or some kind of other support, to help in that part of the piece of the equation?
Well, I would say that question would be really great for a therapist or a social worker or a psychologist. And that's not me, but my experience is that learning from others how to have those conversations, whether that means finding a family support group or finding external resources to bring in. Many of these movement disorder centers of excellence or places where you go, for example, here locally in Denver, you've got Anschutz, which has the movement disorder clinic. You have chaplains. You have a chaplain, you have a social worker, you've got nurse practitioners, people who can help you navigate those hard conversations. And it's really about looking at, sort of a palliative care approach, starting at the very beginning of diagnosis and like talking about, why am I here? What's my purpose? Why do I exist? Some of the existential questions in life, and a non-denominational or denominational chaplain can help, or social worker can help you and a family manage those things together. Because none of us are really, few of us are skilled. We don't go to school for this, right? We don't have those skills innately. So to have somebody lead you through those conversations can be quite helpful.
Well, and asking those questions can be super empowering for the patients and the family members to understand, to ask the providers and ask their support structure. Yeah. So I think that was, really helpful. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And if you don't live near somewhere that you have an in place care team like that, you can piece together, you can find a chaplain, perhaps a chaplain who deals with chronic illness would be the best. You can find a social worker, you can find nurse practice, you can build your own palliative care approach, even if you aren't living somewhere that has a center. And that palliative care approach does not mean hospice, right? Hospice is at the very, very, very end stage of palliative care. Palliative care is comfort care, is a way to live really well when you're dealt with a diagnosis. So you could be 20 years old, get a Parkinson's diagnosis, and start with a palliative care approach.
And with Parkinson's, in my limited experience, and family members and friends have had Parkinson's, it presents differently with each individual. No two people are the same. And, trying to understand that, right? Because it's so different. How does the Davis Phinney Foundation provide those different options for how somebody may cope if they're presenting one way versus another? How do you kind of mesh that together?
Yeah, that's a really astute question. And obviously, Nicole, you've encountered more than one person with Parkinson's, because it is such a designer disorder. And so our resources are really developed to help you navigate and welcome you in and help you create a path depending on what you need at the time. So I think what you're referring to is what we like to use as an iceberg analogy. So you think about the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg that you see are the motor symptoms of Parkinson's. You might see tremor and rigidity and stiffness and slowness of movement. But that which lies under the surface, under the water, are all of the non-motor, mood, autonomic things that you may have with Parkinson's. Most people have some, but not all of the things. So what a person with Parkinson's is experiencing, and the things that we are told are the most difficult, are the things that are under the surface. So we don't necessarily know when you come to the Davis Phinney Foundation what you're struggling with the most, and you may not even have words to describe it because you don't know what that means. You may not know what apathy means. You may not know what neurogenic orthostatic hypotension means. Right? Because you've never had, but these are all the symptoms that you may or may not have. So what we attempt to do at the Davis Phinney Foundation is create content, is create, podcasts and videos and webinars and books. And we have an ambassador program of leaders, community leaders who can help you navigate your Parkinson's, is to help you create your own sort of bespoke path, your own way that you can live better. So, if tremor is your biggest problem, you may not care about Parkinson's disease, dementia, or psychosis. And so you need to go down a slightly different path to understand what's going to help you the most. So we really try to create pathways in and through our information, and then have leaders walk you through. So one of the things that we realize is individual connection makes such a big difference. And so we've got close to 200 ambassador leaders, some of whom are only Spanish speaking, and some of whom are English speaking, and a few bilingual individuals who are leaders in their communities. And we have them profiled on our website. So you could search and say, I want somebody who's a woman, who's young, who's still having children. I want to talk to somebody who, or is single, or, all these different criteria. And then you can sort and find, this person is kind of like, they may live in Alabama, but they're willing to talk to me and help me through what I'm struggling with right now. So that is another way that we try to help somebody with a really complex disorder and a really complex set of symptoms.
That's fantastic. That's great. I didn't know that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. And that's volunteer. They volunteer. People want to help other people, knowing that people don't have to do this alone. And I think it's the same with aging, right? Everybody's aging. Everybody's age. We've got lots of examples of people who've done this well, and probably a zillion gurus and self-help books and all to tell you how to do this well. But we've got examples right around us in our own communities of people who are really engaged and active and still cognitively sharp, and who can be mentors as we're trying to figure out how to age well.
When you look at the Parkinson's community today, what gives you the most confidence about what our future holds?
What gives me the most confidence is that there are some really exciting studies that are going on, investigations into therapies, treatments, and even disease-modifying treatments. That gives me a lot of hope that perhaps one day this will be figured out. So that gives me a lot of hope. It also gives me a lot of hope that while the numbers are drastically increasing, the numbers of people diagnosed with Parkinson's, there's a huge movement of individuals who are really concerned about this as an issue in our world, and these individuals are pretty convinced it's a man-made problem, and are out advocating to remove pesticides, herbicides, toxins from our air, our water, and our food, because there's a pretty strong link between those things in our systems and that we put into our bodies, advertently or inadvertently, that cause Parkinson's. So it gives me hope that there's a lot of talk now about how do we get rid of some of these things in our environment. So those are the things I think that give me most hope.
Yeah, it sounds super promising.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Absolutely, that'd be great. We have, Polly, we have this segment that we do for our guests. It's kind of like our empowering lightning round, so to speak. And so we will ask you a series of questions, and if you can just say the first thing that comes to mind. So the first question is, one empowering truth about Parkinson's.
You can live well with Parkinson's.
One habit that changes everything.
Movement.
One mindset shift that makes a difference.
This is not impossible. You can do this, and break this down into baby steps and celebrate every achievement. Every victory counts.
That's right.
One reminder for caregivers.
You're not alone, and you have to take care of yourself.
Amen to that. The last one is, one message for someone who feels overwhelmed today.
Reach out for help. Organizations like the Davis Phinney Foundation exist to help you, and again, break it down into chunks.
Amazing. This conversation has been amazing, and
Oh, good.
yeah, no, thank you so much. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so empowering, and there's so much going on. I don't mean to get emotional, but
I know.
there's a lot going on, and this has been fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Polly.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Clearly, I love talking about.
Yours out at the end.
We'll edit out the
Impactful if Nicole is emotional.
well, it's very personal,
The Davis Phinney Foundation has been, since I moved to Colorado, I've been exposed to it and the work that the foundation does. And it's been empowering. And just thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ooh, today's conversation reminds us that Parkinson's doesn't just affect movement. It touches identity, relationships, confidence, and the way someone sees their future. And when it feels overwhelming, that's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that no one should have to navigate something this complex without support.
And if today's conversation resonated with you, whether you're living with Parkinson's or you're supporting someone who is, or simply wanting to be better prepared for the future, we hope you heard this clearly. A diagnosis doesn't erase dignity, and you don't have to figure this out alone. The right information and community can change everything.
If you'd like to learn more about Polly's work, you can visit the Davis Phinney Foundation through the link in our show notes, where you will also find resources designed to help individuals and families live well at every stage.
Because dignity in aging isn't just about medical care. It's about empowerment, advocacy, and staying connected to purpose and possibility.
We're Tasha Beckman and Nicole Robilotto, and this has been the Empowered Elder Podcast, where we talk about home, heart, and how thoughtful preparation and strong community become acts of care for the people we love. Thank you for being part of this conversation. We'll see you next time.